Hello, everyone. My name is Jamoke Belogan, and I'm the Senior Communications Associate at Advancement Project, and welcoming you to Save Our Sisters. Today, we're here to talk about the school to prison pipeline and young women of color. We have in front of us, we have Yeshi in very, very cold New York. And then we have Logan, Erika, Victoria, and then Alina, and also Asia. So if you guys can introduce yourself and, just tell us where you are in school.
You go first. Okay, I'll go first. As my name tag says, I'm Logan. I'm a senior at North Miami Beach Senior High School. I've worked with the organizations Save Day, the Alliance for LBTQ Youth, Power You, and Pride Lines. And I'm here on the panel today to educate.
Okay, awesome. Erika?
I'm Asia Hernandez. I am a senior at Miami Senior High School. I've worked with the Alliance for LGBTQ Youth. I've worked with PSFU, Powerful Sister Friends Unite. I've also worked with the Transylvania Group Project for Survivors Pathway, and I'm here to educate people on girls in schools, girls in the workplace, and girls in society in general.
Thank you. Erika?
I'm Alina Serrano. I'm a social worker, founder, director of Yes Sister Friends.
I'm Victoria Byfield. I go to North Miami Senior High. I'm in 11th grade. I've been in GSA. We now changed it to Blitz at my school. And I just want to give information to people that don't really understand the LGBTQ community and things like that, and tell their girls.
Hi, my name is Erika. I'm a freshman at Florida International University. I'm here to enlighten and just shed a voice for women of color. And I've been doing Yes Sister Friend with Alina for 2 years, and this is my second year coming back.
Yeah, awesome. So as I said before, the chat is sponsored by Power You Center for Social Change, who do amazing work on the ground in Miami, and then Advancement Project, a national racial justice organization, and then Yes Sister Friend. Yes Sister Friend is the brainchild of Alina Serrano, who just introduced herself. So I wanted her to start the conversation off by first talking about what led you to create this group, and what did you hope would happen what you hoped would happen because of the creation of the group.
First and foremost, I want to say that as a human being, as a woman of color, as a Puerto Rican black woman, I'm a community organizer at heart. I seek the career in social work, and in doing so, I ended up working at the Alliance for Gay, Lesbian, Bisexual, Transgender Questioning Youth as a care coordinator. And I've been there for 7 years plus, and within my work as a care coordinator, what I've been seeing in Miami is that a lot of resources and spaces are not inclusive of women, especially young women. A really good example that I usually give is, for instance, we can see safer sex workshop, which is co-ed or sometimes specifically directed for young gay men. But never do we really see something as significant as that for young women. As a care coordinator, I saw the lack of resources and just a space for young women to come together and just be without any judgment, without any criticisms or any social roles that they had to play. Yeah. So in the last 2 years plus, on my downtime as a community member, I've intended diligently to create safer spaces, increase the spaces for specifically lesbian, bisexual, transgender, female, questioning, and queer young women of color. So that's the priority. Yes Sister Friend has been created with those two priorities. Women are welcome, right? It's a safer space for women. White girls could come, anyone could come as long as you're a girl, right? Like you identify. So that's pretty much the basis of it.
Yeah.
I just also wanted to say quickly that I've been very much influenced by organizations like Power U, Miami Worker Center, and specifically two organizations that come in mind. New York City, because I'm from New York City, is Casa Taversache, as well as influenced by the work of Soul Hat in Chicago and in Illinois, which is Save Our Lives, Hear Our Truth. So
Yeah.
being influenced by other powerful, influential women of color, I feel like I live in Miami now. This is what I get to create with the young women here.
Yeah, and I want so I think, Yeshi, this would be a great place for you to talk about why Power U is interested in this work and why this is important, and how the coalition between Power U and Yes Sister Friends started, and then we can get into the conversation about school to prison pipeline and also what it's like for girls to be in school, especially young women of color. So, Yeshi?
Yeah. So again, my name is Yeshi, and I'm an organizer with Power U, and I would have to say that the relationship between Power U and the Alliance, specifically with Alina, started years ago. So I met Alina when I was a youth member at Power U, and when I first started organizing to end the school to prison pipeline, that was like when I was a high school senior, about 8 years ago, and she was working with Pride Lines, and she did an amazing job of sort of helping us bring together both spaces. Pride Lines, which is a service-based organization providing services, direct services, and groups to LGBTQ youth, and Power U, which our focus was on young people who were directly impacted by the school to prison pipeline. So naturally, it sort of happened, I think, out of divine order, and very sort of magically, how right after Alina had approached me about just about asking us to use her space, use our office space to host the group. And this was, she had actually approached me right after we had won a major victory for our reproductive justice campaign, where we got the largest public hospital in the country, actually, Jackson Memorial Hospital, to no longer market and endorse baby formula to African American mothers, right? So on the heels of this huge sort of reproductive justice for justice campaign, we were like, we have these two spaces. We have a reproductive justice space where we're building the leadership of Black women to be movement leaders and to sort of transform communities, you know, as most women of color already do as natural community organizers a lot of times. And we were doing the school to prison pipeline work that was, of course, you know, as long as I've been doing the work, which is 8 years now, been very, very much focused on boys. So Alina approaching us to do the girls group was just an incredible opportunity for us to really put the pedal to the metal and really hit the ball, like hit the road, like really running with creating a space for girls. And for us, you know, Alina took care of the facilitation, of the planning, of the curriculum. But for us, I was a participant, but also someone really doing deep listening within the space as an organizer, so we can get a sense of what were the girls facing within the schools, and how do we empower and sort of build their leadership to not just tell their stories in a powerful way, but to also take action to end the school to prison pipeline and all other forms of state violence that's really, really impacting girls of color, especially LGBTQ girls of color in Miami.
Yeah. So I want to now bring this space to the young women in the room and talk to you about what it is like to be a young woman of color who may identify as LGBTQ in a public school in Miami. So Logan, if you just want to talk about your experiences in school, and then maybe we can go around and just share, like, what does it feel like to walk into a classroom or to walk into a school as you?
Well, I know that I feel like I have been fortunate because the teachers and the staff that I have run into, they haven't necessarily given me a hard time. But then again, like identifying how I identifying genderqueer, but the way I appear is more feminine, so I don't really get that many questions. I kind of fly under the radar. But I see other youth at my school that get doors slammed in their faces and get treated badly because they don't fit the stereotypical box of what you should look like, or even because of their orientation. So it makes us feel like we aren't even safe in school. and that's one of the places that we're supposed to be safe in because we go to school to learn.
Yeah. Asia?
I've actually never really seen anything firsthand or secondhand of girls being tossed out of classrooms or being locked from classrooms. But I do have, one time my friend told me a story about a few weeks ago. She's transitioning from male to female. And she told me that teachers would sometimes, seclude her from the classroom. I'm unsure if the teachers were trying to protect her from the bullying from the kids because she's a sophomore. And the kids constantly would harass her and laugh at her. During Spirit Week, she came dressed as a flapper in a red dress. It was a beautiful red dress, and she looked magnificent. But she wasn't really doing anything wrong. She wasn't showing anything. And the teachers would keep her from coming into the classroom. And she told me this. Did you have anything to help her out with, or just... I did try to consult our LGBTQ specialist in school, but she told me that she was just exaggerating.
Yeah. And Erika, I know that you are a freshman at FIU, but you graduated last year. Can you tell me about your experience as a Black woman in Miami-Dade Public School?
For me, I would say personally, I felt as if like I've heard it said before that I felt as if I had to work twice as hard just to be half as good.
Yeah.
And I felt like, especially, I didn't go to, my home school is North Miami Beach Senior High, and I actually went to Miami Lakes, and I felt like that just put more pressure on me being in a whole Hispanic culture, trying to fit in, and then just being like kind of like an upper class environment, and then trying to fit in and try to keep up with these classes and try to gain the respect as my peers. Like, okay, I'm actually in these honor classes or AP, I'm trying to strive for something. And they're not used to seeing someone like me because they automatically assume I'm from Carroll City or I'm from Opalapa or something like that. And not saying that there's anything wrong with being from there. Like, there's students that were there that could understand things that I couldn't help me out. But it was just, I would say a discouragement, like being in a classroom with someone and them not having that faith in you. And your teacher is just like not expecting you to have the same resources and be like, just automatically assuming that you're at a disadvantage. And even if you are, that doesn't cut you from the race of making it just as everyone else in the classroom. And it's been a personal journey for me, which like I felt as if I was lucky enough because like I get to work with these girls, I work with Alina, and like having that available to me. And it's always made me wonder about students who never had that before me, or like when my sisters were in school before and maybe they didn't have that available to them at North Miami Senior High or at any high school. And it's really making me wonder now, like, what is it that we actually need in school to help girls not feel this way if they don't have the resources?
Yeah. Victoria, do you have anything to add about your experience at school?
Actually, no, because in school I never actually experienced something like that. Like, I don't know, because my friend, I know because he's it was she transitioned into a he, and he used to tell me how like because he would not go by his government name, which is a female name, so he'll always call himself like Michael, or like he changes his name every few days. So they wouldn't call him by his name, by his name that he referred to himself as. They'll call him like Gloria. So like he wouldn't feel validated. Yes, he wouldn't feel like there. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
So it just, I don't know. I guess that's like that shows like he don't really get the respect that he wants from the adults that work in the schoolhouse, like the teachers.
Yeah. So this study came out earlier last week about suspension rates for Black girls. And it was really shocking to me because it was very, very like eye-opening. So for every white girl that is suspended, 6 Black girls are suspended. What's shocking about that fact is that when you look at boys, for every white boy that's suspended, three 3 black boys were suspended. And so there's this very gender and race dynamic with young women of color. And I want to know, why do you think educators perceive the way that women of color behave or just who they are as a threat or something that needs to be controlled? Why is that number so high? Victoria?
So I feel like that number is so high because when, like, okay, they look at black girls and boys and they automatically assume that they're going to have a really negative outbreak. Like they're going to start causing up a whole a storm and stuff. And like, it's like they perceive us as a very, let's say, ghetto, very loud talking, aggressive person. But like, if say like a white person, like white people, like they have manners, and so when they address us, they just like, instead of calming that person down and say, I'm sit down, I'm gonna talk to you and get your side of the story, I'm gonna help you out, I'm gonna consult this and that. They just aggressive. So if you get aggressive, if to say somebody be aggressive to me, I'm gonna be very aggressive back. So it's like a push and pull. So, but to like say a white person, they very calm, calling your parents to sit down and just like they take it easy. So that's why there's probably more suspension rates and detention stuff for a black person more than a white person.
Go ahead. I would actually like to add on to that. That also ties into the zero tolerance policy that they have at schools now. For example, okay, I go to North Miami Beach Senior High. It is predominantly Haitian and Latino. So it's basically, the demographics. So you're always seeing kids getting suspended. I mean, NMB has the highest rate of indoor suspensions. And one time there was a fight like in front of the school, and it was 2 women of color. The police come, the school officers and whatnot, and instead of actually breaking up the fight, they begin to beat these girls with batons to try to break up the fight instead of actually,
like this year or like a few years ago?
This actually happened last year, and the video of the cops beating the girls is on Facebook.
Oh my goodness.
It started circulating and everyone saw it, and that's how I knew about it. And it's just like, it's like Victoria said, like they basically treat us like we are animals and that like we don't have problems, And it's just like, this is why we get pushed out of school. If you don't come to school in your uniform, you're gonna get like suspended or for however many days. It's like, what if you can't afford these uniforms? It's just like they don't think about what we have to go through. They just want to suspend us because they don't want to deal with us.
Yeah.
In addition to like them not understanding what we go through, I think that goes into consideration as being a black female in school, and you feel as if you're always on defense because you're black and then you're female. So you feel as if you always got to fight to prove yourself. You always got to fight to challenge you. That may gives off that attitude, that sassiness. You may misunderstand it and automatically seem as if like you're being rude, disrespectful. I'm not even gonna try to hear your side of the story. You're suspended. That's automatically, and they're not even trying to ask and figure out what is the root of the problem. Why are you on defense? Why are you on edge? What do you need that we can give to you? Like, do you need to talk to someone? Anything like that? And automatically they just cut you off. They don't want to deal with it. As a principal, I feel as if they're so focused on the number of students, they don't have the time to be considerate to the individual student and be like, why are you fighting? Why is this? Why is that? So they suspend you and send you right back home to whatever problem that is that you're facing.
I wanted to speak into this in regards to like the way I see it is, especially as a social worker that goes into the schools, I was the angry Puerto Rican that went to school and got suspended because I spoke my mind. I think young women of color, they're up against what they say, like your stripes, right? Am I being punished? Am I being attacked or targeted because I'm a woman, or is it because I'm a person of color? So those are the 2 things that, whether it's said or not, it's happening. And then also, if your sexual orientation, you identify or you are perceived as lesbian, bisexual, anything under the rainbow, then you got 3 strikes and you're out. So we already coming into a context of fight, like what Miami specifically, there's a segregation that happens geographically, right? So what Erika was saying before about going to Miami Lakes Educational Center and it's predominantly Latino, there was a real unspoken and sometimes spoken race paradigm happening that there's a clash. So then the adults that are there and the way this community is set up, we're not so in tune with healing that, right? The racism that happens, the prejudice that happens, or the divide and conquer, and then educating and formulating something else. So I think and this is another reason why I stepped to Power You doing this work, because to do Yes Sister Friend, is because Power You has done restorative justice work, right? So that's where you see when there's a dilemma, there's some sort of event that happens. The idea is versus being suspended, we actually use principals and counselors, which they should be doing this regardless, in mediation sessions, right? And you see less of that. Our children, our youth are not having that. So as a care coordinator, specifically also with the Alliance, right? And sometimes I have to, let me just locate myself. Sometimes I wear two hats, right? I'm doing my work, my career, right, as a care coordinator for the Alliance, and then there's Alina, the social worker who's doing Your Sister Friend. But even there's always that fight or that pushback, that advocacy that has to get done to say this girl's passion is being perceived as anger, right? It happens all the time in our culture as Black and Latinas. As a Puerto Rican, I'm not. Everybody makes that joke about you don't know if we're fighting in a party or not. That's who I am. But just doing this makes me ghetto. So there's always that fight. It happens to me now. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I have years under my belt as a scholar. But because I do this, right, or my hair is this, all of a sudden, I'm already coming into the context of she shouldn't know anything, right? So I think that's what the girls are speaking into.
Yeah, and yes, you've been doing this, as you said, for like the last 8 years. Have you seen changes in Miami? Are things getting better? Are things getting worse? I mean, and I know you also went to Miami-Dade public school. So can you just speak into that, the changes you've seen throughout the years, if you've seen any?
Can you hear her?
Yes, she?
I had myself muted. Over the past few years, I've seen changes, and I have to say those changes are really because of the organizing that's been happening locally in Miami against the school-to-prison pipeline and also nationally. You know, something that Alina said that really resonated with me was about girls' passion being interpreted as anger. You know, and that is definitely consistent with my personal experience. I was like suspended. I remember the very first time I was given indoor suspension. It was 6th grade, and I was totally new to middle school. And I was in my I had like a computer typing class or whatever. And I remember being in class and I was talking. And I think I was like talking to another student next to me, but whatever. Immediately after like having a conversation, I wasn't the only one talking. Actually, the person I was talking to was a boy. I was like called out in the middle of class for being disruptive. And then when trying to explain my side of the story and talk and you know, have a conversation with the teacher about what was happening, so I was, you know, immediately sort of silenced and sent to indoor suspension, you know, for like 3 days. You know, so I was taken out of class for 3 days and like suspended, and you know, and it was really like a really sort of scary experience. And I remember thinking to myself, like, is this what jail feels like? You know, having to like line up one after the other. But anyway, you know, and that was something that, you know, unfortunately, 6th grade, that wasn't the last experience that I had with that. And I realized, you know, now in my life, wow, like me always speaking and talking loud, it's, you know, turns out years later I would turn into a community organizer, and that would be a gift that's actually very helpful to the work that I do, you know. But that's you know, that gift was interpreted as being me resistant, rebellious. I was called, you know, all types of different names, aggressive, but disruptive, right? So my presence, my very presence was disruptive to the learning environment. Even though I was a straight A student, I had the highest test scores in the school, et cetera, et cetera. My very presence was disruptive, and that was because of my skin color. And also, you know, we're looking at the evidence now that when you're darker skinned girls are seen as being more aggressive and are seen as being more of a threat, right? So in talking about the changes that we've seen, you know, I really credit all the changes to the organizing work that has been done specifically around restorative justice. And we can talk about what restorative justice is and sort of how restorative justice is an essential part of an important solution, especially in talking about Black girls and LGBTQ girls and girls of color and school push out. But the work that we were doing then, 8 years ago, has sort of caught up with the growing evidence and research around restorative justice. And now, you know, we're at a time where, you know, New York Times articles are being written about restorative justice, and entire school districts have adopted restorative justice, like Oakland and Denver, you know. So really crediting the organizing work. But on the local level, the changes that we've seen is the school district, for example, got a change to the model code, which we organized for in 2010. So they changed the school code of conduct to where young people are not allowed to be suspended for level 1 and level 2 infractions. So that's talking, that's uniform, all of those sort of infractions we're not supposed to be suspended for, right? But the reality is that what's happening in the school today, and you know, Erika and Logan and Asia and Victoria can talk more about it. People are being suspended for that, and people are going to indoor suspension for that. And Logan talked about North Miami Beach Senior High being the #1 school of indoor suspension for Black students in Miami. You know, so this is still happening, right? So for us, it's like, how do we continue to do the organizing work to really address what's happening, but also making sure that we're uplifting the voices of young people, especially the experiences of girls, because until we lead in with the experiences of girls, especially in the organizing work, we're not going to get change for anybody in terms of ending the school to prison pipeline.
So why do you think Black girls and brown girls are seen as different from white girls, at least according to educators?
Is that a question for me?
For everyone. But you can take a stab at it, Yeshi.
Yeah, I think that the reality is that, you know, Kayla pointed out the zero tolerance policies in the school district, and we see zero tolerance policies emerging in like the 90s as a response to the Columbine shooting, right? Columbine didn't happen in inner city, you know, predominantly Black public schools. That happened in suburban white schools. But what happened in essence was that all of these different policies that were turning schools into like places to fight crime, that was really carried out and enforced in poor, low-income Black and Latino schools all over the country, right? So in the interpretation of those policies, you know, the reality has been what we know as institutionalized racism, what we know as the ways in which, even from the beginning, images and media representations of Black women in contemporary culture and in historical and in history has all created these stereotypes around Black women that, unfortunately, as we can see based on the data and based on all this new information that's emerging that we've always known around Black girls, that what's happening in the media and what's happening in society in terms of the institutionalized racism and in terms of what the white supremacy is being carried out in the schools, in the classroom every single day.
Do you guys want to add to that, folks in Miami?
Could you actually repeat the question, please?
Yeah, I wanted to know why Black girls and Hispanic girls are seen different from white girls.
I mean, that also ties into white supremacy and the fact that we live in, like, a European-driven world. I mean, example, like, if you look even at the beauty standards, like, if you have, like, long, flowy hair and whatnot, it's like that is what is deemed as beautiful. And, you know, and you have women of color that try to create our own spaces and try to come into our own spaces. And it's like, yeah, it's like people said earlier, we see it as like angry and aggressive. And it's like there was a study done that, like, for example, paramedics and whatnot, they seem to be under the impression that people of color feel less pain than white passing people. You are far less likely to get any type of morphine, sedative, anything if you are in an accident if you're a person of color. Like, there was people that were chiming in on a forum, and they were saying that they saw this guy get hit and he's bloody and everything. And the white woman that hit him, the officers are talking to her and are checking on her, making sure he's okay, when this guy is laying in the gutter and he's bloody and he's like dying. And they're like, oh, he's fine. If he was able to walk here and drag himself here to get help, he's fine. We need to make sure that she's okay.
Yeah. So I think what we're all getting at, and what Yeshi was saying and what Logan was saying, is bias. Either it be explicit or implicit. It's what's happening in our schools. So knowing this, what do you think that schools can do to make sure that schools are safe and they're welcoming and they're a place of learning for all women and those who identify as LGBTQ? So how do schools lessen suspension rate, expulsion rate, and how do they welcome girls? How are they welcoming? How can they do that?
Well, once upon a time when I still lived as male in middle school, I remember being coddled by the administrative system. And I think that for girls, the same thing they do for boys, wherein they speak to the boys and they ask what's wrong, and they basically treat them like their children. They should do that for girls too, because girls are usually very busy. They have a lot of chores. They have a lot of administrative duties to do for themselves at home. Sometimes girls of color and women of color need to look for jobs to support their family because, someone has to step up. So yeah, I think that they need to talk to them. They need to see what's wrong. They really do. And they can't just assume that just because a girl is angry or because they're asserting themselves doesn't mean that they're being disrespectful.
I think in addition to that, I would have to say I would like to see sensitivity training for teachers, administrators, educators, because sometimes these people just don't know. They haven't been exposed to it. They don't understand. They're like scared. If they see something they don't know, they're just gonna walk away, wash their hands with it, and just not deal with it at all. And I think in order to deal with this, you have to know what you're working on. Like, what is the problem? Actually communicate and try to understand what is it that these people, what is it that people of color need, or anyone that's in the LGBTQ community that needs help, and not just be coddled by the system because did it help you at all?
No.
It wasn't, and it wasn't comforting at. It didn't give you what you need.
But it didn't really give me what I needed. It wasn't really solving the problem. I was still a very aggressive child. So
I would say administration just needs to be educated and learn how to deal with incoming students, because it's a changing population. You're gonna have more people coming out, people facing challenges, trying to use the bathroom and not knowing which one to walk into, people getting harassed and bullied, especially with social media nowadays. Everyone just needs to be a part of it, understand, and be willing to help.
Yeah. To add on to the sensitivity training and whatnot, a story that I have is that I ended up having to call a lawyer on a teacher because this particular teacher was being very transphobic and was not even just targeting trans youth, but also targeting other LGBTQ youth, like slamming doors in their faces and whatnot. Instead of using preferred names, using birth names, like outing children in class. And they will go as far as to calling the parents and making it seem like the child was the problem instead of their behavior. And administration kind of failed because they already had a meeting about this, and the teacher started to do more passive-aggressive methods. And administration was like, well, they're not calling you by your birth name, so there's nothing that we can do. So I shouldn't have to call a lawyer. I shouldn't have to be contacting to see what type of legal action that we should do. It should be the administration system that is taking care of us so we don't have to go to these lengths. Like, I'm 17. Why do I have to call a lawyer?
I think for me, as a social worker, I would love to see administration, right? School administration actually work on creating those spaces like PTA spaces again, right? Like being open to community members coming in and actually sharing the expertise, right? Like I would love to see schools having physical spaces, not just the theory or the policy, but physical spaces that are safe. And when I mean safe, I mean physical, mental, and emotionally safe for young girls. What does that look like? That looks like them having faculty that can actually speak to them about women issues, right?
Yeah.
Right down from moon cycle, right, all the way up to like social roles, right? Because I think Asia was speaking about like the girls already having too much to do, right? In my perspective of the work that I do, I intend to be a person for young women that can know, first of all, they are forced to be reckoned with, and that I see them. They're present. They're there. And that's, I think, one of the problems that, one, black and brown girls are not seen in general, right? They're made to be invisible, whether through stereotypes or whatever it is, or just physically not seen. So then I think when they do encounter us, they don't know what to do with us, right? So just coming to the table of saying, I don't know what to do with you. Teach me. Teach me. If we would have more administrative faculty and organizations like that, and I mean in the school system, where they will allow other folks to come in, right, without resistance, maybe we could have some more progress.
Probably the reason that we don't really get those type of people to come in is because the administrators, their pride coming away. Their pride to ask for help from other people to help young kids. So they feel that since they probably have been doing this for years, they don't need it. They think what they're doing is right, so they try to force their like opinions or situations on those kids, and like it's having a negative impact on them. So it I feel like those administrators should like get a lesson from other people like higher up. Maybe not. Like even those administrators get lessons from the kids themselves, because so they can understand what it's like from the youth point of view. I can just say kids, youth.
I agree.
You know, it's okay, right, to have a zero tolerance for students, but no one's talking about creating a space where they absolutely will not accept bias, right? You don't see and I don't like to say the hammer down, right, because that's also punitive, but there's a lack of that same type of attitude for the faculty. You do see it in sprinkles. You will have a teacher or a counselor who absolutely is an advocate for that student or for students. But the same way that principal in the administration is quick to suspend someone, well, why don't you hold that teacher or that counselor accountable to the law, right? You don't. That type of work gets to be done. We get to elect. I think that we, like as parents, as community members, we get to elect and choose. We should be choosing who's principal and the vice principal, right? Because if I can choose someone who has the same values as I do, I have a better chance of making sure that my girls are good and other students.
Yeah. So we talked about Erika, were you saying something?
Oh yes, I was gonna mention how you I think you spoke about how the security guards are outing the girls. I think that ties in because like you want to go to school and feel safe, and if you're being outed by these people, it's like you want them to be, how would you say, like held accountable for the action. Like there should be no reason why they're allowed to out you and make you feel embarrassed, and then now your family's finding out, and then you're dealing with a situation that you weren't even prepared with. And then you're trying to come to school to find someone to help you prepare to even tell your parents, and then it's not happening, and it's like the situation blows up in your face.
And let's not forget about the sexual harassment of security guards against women of color.
Yeah. So I want to dig into that. And all of you have talked about an instance where a teacher, a faculty member, security guards, or officers has done something that, to me, is very frightening, right? Maybe it's outing girls, slamming doors in faces, being outwardly transphobic. Has anything happened to these administrators? Do you know of any experiences where actually, like, they were brought to task? Or are they still teaching and still doing their job?
From what I know personally, in my experience, they're still doing their job. Where I know specifically 4 years ago, North Miami Beach, I was actually asked to come in to work with the two girls, right, the two lesbian girls, because obviously they had a problem. But when you speak to them, they don't have the problem. It was their security guard making inappropriate comments, actually sexually harassing them. So the work became on making a report on him. We took it all the way up to the vice principal. He's still there to this day, right? So then, if I, as a one community member, right, one person, then my work starts being, how do you become safe? How do you protect yourself, knowing that there are still people in the hallways and outside of your community still there? So that's what I'm talking about, holding accountable. If that youth could get suspended for not wearing their T-shirt with their emblem, then why is he still there? Why is this security guard still there? Right? Like, there's a very disproportionate rate as to how they hold people accountable.
Yeah.
And I remember one thing someone said, like, a teacher actually said this. They were like, if you're ever having a problem in school, always bring your parents, because the school board and teacher, they're scared of parents because they know that is a bad image for their school and they wouldn't want that. And they know parents can take it to the media, they'll go to the superintendent, they actually make actions happen. So the students who are ever facing like challenges or any situation like that, bring in the parents and actually take it to the vice president and they make it a lawsuit or whatever you have to do to make it actually happen, because people are always willing to listen to a parent. Because if a parent is supporting their child behind it, I think a change can happen with any school.
But the thing is that we shouldn't have to bring in the troops. We shouldn't have to bring in the parents. And what about children that don't have supportive guardians or parents that are available to go to the schools? I mean, for example, when they were voting for my school to have uniforms, they were like, oh, we're going to have a voting. So not surprisingly, the voting for the uniforms was done during work hours when everyone else is at work. No one has time to take off work to go and vote. Not a lot of people have time to take off work and go to their child's school. That is why they rely on the administration to make sure that their children are safe.
Yeah.
I think there's some organizations too, if I'm not mistaken, or some teachers that I know of that attempt to bring in the cultural competency of it all, right? So, for instance, like in Miami, if you take an immigrant family, a lot of, I don't know if I'm saying this correct, a lot, but certain perspectives of like culture, right? Like in my culture, when you go to school, teachers and principals are gonna handle their business. You do what you gotta do there. When you come home, you're a child and you handle your business. You're responsible for certain things. So we think in our culture, teachers are taking care of it, right? So, and I don't have to deal with that. Especially when you have a parent that probably works 2 or 3 jobs, right? They're not available. So what I've seen in my experience is that other teachers or other organizations actually attempt to create programs or workshops where they would educate certain parents or families from different cultures, whether it's Haitian or Latin culture, to say, listen, how you think of education system is not the same as how people hold it here. So there's work around training them to say, you do have to come out and make that vote, because in the United States, in the USA, we don't function the way you might function in Jamaica or Puerto Rico or in Haiti, right? So that type of work I've seen also been done to try to remedy these problems.
Logan, were you going to say something?
Logan, were you going to say something? Logan?
Was I? No, I was going to say something.
Okay. So I think, like, what this brings us to is that what can the community do, right? So if we have antagonistic administrators and teachers and security guards and people in school, what is their job as a community to protect girls and to protect young women of color in these spaces? Like, what can we do?
I think for me, what I missed the most, like when I was younger, was seeing parents actually show up to PTSA meetings and actually get involved. Because I know back then, like my parents used to show up to meetings and they'd be like, well, what about the FCAT? What about this? What about the education? They always had like parents who would be like raising their hand involved, just like, you know, making sure that their voices were heard for their child, their baby, you know, that's the one that they're protecting for. And like for any child who's a person of color or LGBTQ, I feel as if like they'll miss having that, like people get involved. And the thing is, like PTSA wasn't only for the parents. There were people coming out in the community who lived around a school zone and see these kids and was like, okay, I don't think that's right, that's not going on. Like they may not be an actual parent, but they were there getting involved and saying something like, okay, we need a crossing guard here because it's not safe, these cars are flying by. You know, something where the community can input and still be a collective community, but looking out for the common good of the students.
And Yeshi, you've been a community organizer for the last few years. Can you go into more about how you think the community can be more involved in schools, and what they can do to make sure that schools are a safe and welcoming place for students?
Yeah, I think immediately off the top of my head, I would have to say that it's everybody's job to invest in the leadership of young women of color. And that's like, that's the priority, right? So, and that can look, that looks different, and it can look like a lot of different activities look like a lot of different things, right? So it can look like organizations like Power U making very intentional shifts to think about our work to end the school-to-prison pipeline and all of our work to end state violence, and grounding that in a lens of gender justice, right? And grounding that in a lens of uplifting the voices and experiences of girls of color and LGBTQ girls, right? And really making that a priority, making the leadership of young women of color a priority, because as Asia said earlier, young women of color have so many responsibilities already. You know, we're invisible, but we're also very much sort of like holding up the world on our hands a lot of times, right? You know, recently the African American Policy Forum released a report called Black Girls Matter, and we were, one of the biggest points that I think came out of that report was really highlighting the fact that a lot of the caregiving burdens, a lot of the burdens that fall on families fall on young women of color, right? So how do we think about what patriarchy in our homes? How do we think about gender roles in our homes? How do we think about what are the typical responsibilities that girls might have, like watching kids or like cooking or, you know, picking up the slack and chores, and how that not only is really a reflection of patriarchy, but also the, you know, the reality of a lot of like low-income families. Like we need the extra help. Like a lot of families led by single-parent households where the oldest daughter growing up is the second mommy, right? So I think specifically recognizing what girls have to go through, recognizing that yes, girls are resilient and young women of color are resilient, but also rejecting this idea of young women of color being superhuman, right? And not being able, not ever being like, not breaking ever, and not being human, and not having feelings, and not having a limit to how much we can really take on, right? So at the same time, giving space and opportunities for young women to step into meaningful leadership roles and to really step into the fullness of their creative, emotional, and spiritual selves.
Yeah. So we have a few more minutes before we end, and I just wanted to bring it back to Logan, Asia, Erika, and Victoria. And if you could, you know, just tell us, what are the things that you want people to know about what your reality is as a girl of color? Just bring it back to where we started from. And connecting to the last question of what can we as a society and as a people do to make sure that, you know, you are safe and that you're getting the education that you deserve and that you're protected?
That they support us, to us, they, you know, they make sure that we are okay. Sometimes, as girls, our emotions show on our face most of the time for a lot of girls. And if they see us with like a bad face, and they try to avoid us because they think that we're going to pop off on them. But in reality, there must be something wrong. There must be something wrong, and people don't ask. So it'd be great if, they ask us what was wrong. They try to ameliorate that problem, and if they can do so, if they don't know how to do so, they ask us. They ask us how we can help. How they can help us.
Yeah.
Our reality is that one, we're being ignored. We're being dismissed. We are being treated like we have no feelings and whatnot. And at the same time, we're also being objectified. We're being, people are fetishizing us. And it's like, we need people that are going to be allies to us. We need people that are going to listen to us. People that are going to give us space to take up space. People that are going to let us say what we have to say. People that are going to help us accomplish what we want to accomplish, help drive our passion. We need allies.
To continue off of that, I feel as if they are, like you said, they see us as like a fetish, but I feel as if they only need us when they need something to be done after they're done. Like, they're not concerned about the person as a whole. And to me, I really do think it does take a village to raise a child, and I feel as if spaces like this, we can come to each other and be like, okay, I have to go home and cook. Can you watch my little sister for me or something? Somewhere you can be comfortable where all that burden is not on you. Like you say, as a young female of color, you go home, you have many hats. You're like a mom, you're a cooker, you're a cleaner, and you're a student, and you're also working. And it's like you can't handle all that. And I feel as if you just need a space in the community, just like yes, sister friend, just to be able to be like, you know what, I'm not doing it. I need a break. I just don't want to do it. Yes, it's about me. I need my space. And feel comfortable saying that, not feeling guilty about it, because as women, we always feel guilty for not going or being nurturing all the time. So,
I guess if we had much more of a let's say a soft-spoken, less aggressive person or people come towards it, yeah. If it was less aggressive, it would be much more easy. Yes, much more approachable, easier to contact with, to communicate with. So, cause if you come with a very rough personality or aura around you, you're gonna feel that person. If you already feel threatened right now without that person around you, you're just gonna feel more threatened. So it's just that energy, you just try to bring off much more aggressive energy than that person have. You push them back. But if you had much more easier energy around you, it's okay, I could bring myself down. I could communicate with this person, what's happening to me, that person can help me. So it was if people learn how to be much more gentle, then it would be better, especially around Black or Latino folks, because we do have a aggressive demeanor around us. So they take that and they manipulate it into something bad. And so they come with a really bad thing around us. You gotta know what I'm saying. Yeah.
We got you. And then Alina, I wanted you to end with just how you hope this work would expand, right? You're doing this in Miami. I've been a part of this space sometimes, and it's been just a really transformative space for me personally. And I personally think that, this is something that should be nationwide. So how do you think of this work expanding, and just also talk about what the next steps are for your sister friend?
So in the vision of it all, I know for a fact that it's already expanding. It's going to be big, and as an organization, it's going to be it is a force to be reckoned with, right? Individually, and also those folks that already partake in it. And one of the reasons why I know it's happening and it's going to continue to grow is because, yes, sister friend, the vision of it all, the history of it all, comes from the backbone of community organizing, comes from the perspective of social justice, comes from the perspective of women of color to be present, seen, healed, and honored. So Next steps is, yes, Sister Friend gets to have another cohort, right? Those are like the tangible results for this year. Organizationally, legally, it'll become a 501c3, so on and so forth, and continue with the networking. The vision that I have for Yes Sister Friend is that sooner than later, we would have either satellites or a storefront where a few things are happening. There will be therapeutic services for young women and women altogether. There'll be holistic space, like space for holistic work, meaning about like, you know, the healing and more of the culturally spiritual stuff happening. As well as creating space for women to do community work. I've always said this when I speak about my vision is that, you know, you'll have the therapist working at a quiet side. On the other side, you'll have, you know, children playing in the nursery happening. You'll have the social workers doing what they have to do. But most importantly, I want to create safe space where, like, a woman can come and just chill. They don't have to be anyone but themselves. If they need 15 minutes to quiet down and take a break, you will. It's based out of love. It's based out of sisterhood. It's based out of honoring the woman. Long time ago, I learned that there's a tribe in somewhere in Africa, right? I don't know which country it is, but one of the tribes say that when they see you, the way they greet you is they say, "I see you," and the respondent says, "I am here," and that is basic. That is the very core of what Yes Sister Friend is. That I see you, I recognize you're there, and that you're a force to be reckoned with. And if we can continue to grow, whether it be satellite, storefront, partner up with like Power You, the Alliance, and continue to do this, the shift is going to continue to shift towards the world that we get to have a safer world for women, especially women of color.
Yeah. So thank you all for joining me in this conversation. Thank you, Yeshi, in Cold New York. And again, if you missed the chat, it's going to be available on YouTube shortly. So I'll send the link around to everybody who was on right now. Follow Power You on Twitter at PowerYou305. Follow Yes Sister Friend at Yes Sister Friend. Also Advancement Project at ADV_project. And again, I want to thank everyone. I am Jumoke from the Advancement Project, and this has been a conversation on saving our sisters. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.